Okay, hello everybody. So we're gonna do a cylinder mold today. So here's a mold that we have at school, but if you wanna do the cylinder one, you can find lots of different pieces to use as your mold. So this is just a water bottle from my house. It's a glass bottle. And then this is a takeout container from Thai food that I got last week. And these will all work really well. So any other sort of water bottles, to-go containers, they'll all work as long as they're shaped as a cylinder. Today, I'm gonna use this water bottle to demo. So you're gonna want a piece of paper to be your liner. Newspaper is the best, but I don't have any newspaper with me right now. So we need a liner because this is glass. It's not porous, the clay will stick to it. So we're gonna put this on as a little shield to make sure that the clay is gonna slip off nicely. So I'm just gonna wrap around my paper. You don't want it to be too tight, the paper, because it's gonna have to come off later and you want it to slide off easily. So I'm gonna put some tape across there and one more at the top so that it stays on. Okay, so see, this is gonna slide off later. You want it to be able to slide a little. Okay, so now that we've prepped our mold, we have our liner on there with paper, we can make our slab. So it's gonna be the same thing as all the other slabs that we have made. So I'm gonna get a big chunk of clay. It's an appearance again of my DIY wire that I made during quarantine, because I couldn't get any tools for a bit. So it's a wire I found in my backyard and 2 pieces of wood. So we'll make this work for now. And I'm gonna cut off my piece of clay and I'm gonna slap it in between 2. I'm slapping it down like this because it just makes it easier when you roll it out, because this side looked fatter, so I kind of just hit it down a bunch so it'll be easier to roll out. I have my 2 pieces of wood. You could use rulers or books, anything that is flat and is the same length or width. So I'm gonna put those on the side. I'm gonna take my roller, which you could use something like this bottle, another sort of water bottle, anything cylindrical will help with that. So I'm gonna roll this out. Now this one, I want it to be pretty long because it has to wrap around the whole entire cylinder. The last, I'm flipping this over so I can get that other side. The last one that we did, we wanted it to be more circular because we draped it over that pie container. This one, we're not gonna do as much of that width of the flipping the clay over because we want it to be pretty long so it can wrap around. So I'm rolling this out, making sure that it's all the same thickness. I am gonna flip it over this way once so it gets a little bit taller. Okay, gonna flip it back, roll it out one more time to get it nice and even. Okay, so here's my slab. As you can see, it's all the same thickness because of my 2 pieces here. Now I want a flat end of this. So see how it's oval, there's no flat pieces. I want a flat piece because I want it to be flat at the bottom. So I'm gonna take one of my pieces of wood. You could use a ruler, you could use a book, anything that's straight. And I am going to cut off this excess piece. Here, I cut that off. So now the bottom, oops, I ripped it. So now the bottom's nice and flat. So I'm gonna take this piece, put it over there for now, bring my mold back. And I wanna wrap my clay around. Oh, and the sides too, I forgot to mention too. You wanna cut those straight too. So I'm gonna take that down. Cut this straight. I'll wait to cut the other one straight because I wanna make sure that this fits all the way around. So I'm gonna take this all the way around, wrap it around, and then I'll see where they meet. I'm gonna cut there. So this is where they meet. I made a little mark so that I know. I am going to unwind it. Cut a flat piece there. I'm gonna cut the top a little flatter too. So now I have a pretty even, nice slab that I know is gonna fit around this. So now, make that even with the end. Nice, okay. There we are. So see, I have a little bit of extra. Oops, it's slipping off, but that's okay. You won't be holding it like I am right now. I'm just doing this to show you. So there's a little bit too much extra clay, so I'm gonna cut that off. But you don't wanna cut too much because you don't want it to be, there to be a gap. So see, this is overlapping slightly, just the littlest bit. And now I'm gonna weld that together. With my fingers. You can use your knife too, but for something like this, I find it easier to just use your fingers. And I'll clean this up a little bit. I'm gonna turn it towards me. I'm just pushing out the clay a little bit more. That's it, so I welded it a little more. You could take your time and make this look nice. And welded there, so it's nice and smooth. And with this one, we were on the outside. We're not on the inside like we did with this first one. This inside one's not really gonna crack, or it's less likely to crack because there's nothing in the way as it shrinks to make it crack. This one does have something in the way, right? So as it shrinks, this bottle's in the way, so it could start cracking, and it's likely that will happen. So you don't want this to get leather hard on here. We're gonna let this dry just for a couple of minutes so it gets a little bit less plastic, but not much, and then you're just gonna slide it off. So I'm even gonna do it right now just to show you how to get it off. And remember, go over this, make sure it's nice and clean and looks smooth. So you could see I did a good job of making this not too tight. So it just pops right out. The paper stayed in there, not a big deal at all. That's totally fine. Mine might even come out right now. Yeah, I was able to pull mine out, but you don't have to pull yours out until it's leather hard. The inside is not welded. So I'm gonna go in with my fingers, and it might be too long, so I'm gonna go in with my knife and weld that a little bit so it's nice and secure. So now you can see on the inside, everything is welded in there. And now you have your cylinder, but you need to let this dry, because see, look, I can squish it and that's gonna cause issues. So you don't want it to squish yet. So I'm gonna put this to the side and let it dry. And like magic, I have a dry one. I did this one earlier, so it had some time to firm up a little bit. And it's leather hard now. So I can still scrape on it, but it holds its shape a lot better. So now that it's leather hard, you need a foot, right? It's just a cylinder right now. You need a foot. So I don't think my extra slab, sometimes you could take a piece of your extra. This is left over, but yeah, it's not big enough. So I'm going to make another little slab. Same process, you just need a little bit this time. I got less clay because it's just going to be the circle at the bottom, like how you did with your coil pots. So I'm just gonna roll this piece out. Flipping it over. Okay, there we go. Nice and even. So it's nice and even piece. I'm gonna take my coil, or my cylinder now, and set it on here. I'm gonna take my knife and trace it. And then I'm gonna cut through at the bottom. So I have the exact shape that I need for the foot. So, see, this was my slab and I cut a circle out of there. Here's my circle for the foot. I'm gonna let this dry a little bit because right now it's super plastic still. So normally I'd let this dry a little bit and get a little bit more leather hard. But for the demo, I'll show you what you would do next. So this is leather hard, so you need to score slip wiggle. Oops. See, okay, here's a good thing. I accidentally cut a piece in there. It's still wet enough to do that. You can always just smooth it out with your finger. Let's say you accidentally took a chunk out. If you have some plastic clay, you can put it in there and just smooth it out. But this is only if the clay is still in between plastic and leather hard, but that's just a little tip. Okay, so since this is leather hard, I need to score slip wiggle. So I'm gonna use my knife, really mess it up. I don't have my slip with me, so I'm just gonna use some water. Dab that on here. Make sure that it's all in there. Okay, so it's really scored up there. Now, usually I'd wait for this to get a little bit more leather hard, but to show you for the demo, I'll do the same thing here. Score on the outside. Put a little bit of water. Usually slips 10 times better, but I don't have my slip, so the water will work for now. Okay. I'm gonna put this on my bat. So this is scored. This is scored. Now I'm gonna put this on there. So I just plopped it right on. There's still some spaces on the side. So I'm gonna make sure to press that in so that the two clay bodies combine nicely. And I'll smooth out around the edges. If there's any clay that's hanging over, I'll smooth that out. So see how there's some here? I just kind of smoothing that out a little bit, going around. That needs to be smoothed down. And smooth everything out. And now you have your bottom. So this is really wet, so I'm not gonna wanna put this on the ground yet like this, because it will stick to the ground and there's just more issues that could happen. So I'm gonna leave it upright and let this dry. And I can come back to it later and clean up the edges if I want to. I can take my knife and clean up anything that looks uneven. If that part looks a little uneven, I'll clean that up, smooth it out. and you can do that later. But for now, I'm gonna let it dry a little bit so this isn't too wet. And this is just your plain cylinder. So to make this creative and add some of your individuality to it, you could do so many things. You could put a face on here, sculpt a face, you could do carvings, so many different possibilities. So I might do some pattern and carvings in here. And remember, you have to incorporate those visual elements of design and principles, or elements of art and principles of design in this piece. So make sure to incorporate those ideas as you build. So let's say I was going to put a bunch of lines like that and create some pattern and some texture since it's indented in there. So keep that in mind as you go, and keep going. I'm excited to see what you make. And remember, I'm going to let this dry like this. You don't want it to dry too fast, so I'm going to just lightly put a bag over it. So right now I just have my plastic wrap, but it could be like a bag. I'm just going to lightly set this over it and, you know, let some air in from the inside, but not too much. So just lightly set it on there and let that dry, and then come back to it and add your carvings or whatever details you want to finish your piece.